Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Parshas Vayakel, and the portion deals almost exclusively with the building of the tabernacle. But it opens with 3 verses dealing with Shabbos. And first it tells us that you should keep the Shabbos, but it only delineates one thing that you're not supposed to do, and that's lo savaru eish b'chol mosh v'seichem. You should not light a fire in all of your dwelling places. Now, the whole idea of bringing Shabbos in when we're talking about the tabernacle suggests something very simple, that although the tabernacle and eventually the temple become the central element of the Jewish worship and rituals of serving God, Shabbos overrides it. And the Talmud even tells us that even though there's a big mitzvah, commandment to build the temple, you still have to stop on Shabbos. Shabbos is more important than the building of the tabernacle. But another important question is, why does it specify lo savaro eish, that you shouldn't burn a fire in all of your dwelling places more than any other of the many prohibitions that exist on Shabbos? And I'd like to make just a simple suggestion. Fire has very interesting elements. It has both a positive element. It could use for cooking, for smelting, for keeping warm, and it also obviously is a destructive force. And the idea of Shabbos very simply is that God created the world in 6 days, and the seventh day, he rests. In other words, the acts of creation are stopped at that point. We now hold back and we relax, so to speak, or God relaxes and watches nature flow. And we're told also that we have to stop our creative forces that are within us, and that we should not be building, we should not be sowing, reaping, harvesting, cooking, all the prohibitions. And the main ingredient of that, which begins most of those forms of work, is building a fire. But again, why is it important, the fire? It's also because the fire also has a destructive force. And therefore, maybe the Torah so subtly is telling us that although we see ourselves as creative forces within nature, and that we change nature, and as it says in the beginning of the Torah, when God creates man and woman, he says that you shall rule over nature. So ruling over nature is building, creating, and building even a temple and worshiping God in ways which are not just meditative and prayerful, but rather filled with ritual, which need the building of the temple. But we're told that yes, it's true that man has creative force, just like God has creation within him. But you should know that that creative force could also be destruction. If you emphasize the material world too much, if you constrict yourself to devoting God only within the material sense, within the physical realm, then you're really eliminating a great part of the ability of man to relate to God. And that is really through, as I mentioned, meditation, prayer, maybe spending time with family. The idea of Shabbos is really to remove yourself from all of those concerns, because those concerns, although necessary and even positive, also draw you away from certain basic elements that a human being needs in order to devote himself to what's really important, whether that's understanding yourself, your family, your relationship with God. So therefore the Torah points out, Lo savaru eish b'chol mosh v'seichem. You shall not light a fire in all of your dwelling places. And I think it's a very simple idea, but it needs constant revisiting, because we have a tendency to focus on the element of creation, of building, of doing what only human beings can do. And we have to realize that no, we also have to stop. We have to think. We have to just relax. We have to be, in a sense, almost one with nature. And that's the same thing God did. God says, the creative forces that I've used in the first 6 days of creation have now come to an end. And now God is going to almost remove himself from that creation, and he's going to pull the switch and let nature take its place. And when nature takes its place, human beings are also in that Gan Eden, in that Garden of Eden, where we just see and experience the beauty of nature and the relationship that we have with God before we start to go out and build a world. Good Shabbos.